Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. I have got a very interesting guest who's joined us today to talk about personal branding. And I'm so excited to have Kate Pozeznik. I hope I said that right. I practiced it. How are you, Kate?
I am doing well, Vicki. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm really excited about having our conversation.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here. And this is, from our conversation earlier, this is a topic that you and I both are really passionate about, really excited about. And before we jump into that, I just want to thank our audience for being here. We know you have a choice. I know you hear me say that every time, that we are so, so grateful that you chime in and you listen to our podcast and share it with a friend. If you know somebody who needs support in building their personal brand or doesn't even understand their personal brand, make sure you share the episode today with your friends and your colleagues. So, Kate, let me give the audience just a little bit of background on you, and then we're just going to jump in and start talking. So, Kate has experienced the frustration of choosing a career path, identifying those diamond in the rough jobs, finding the right people to network with, and developing confidence to pursue her purpose and unique version of success. That's why she founded Quirk, a bold personal branding and career consulting firm that helps accelerate the careers of amazing trailblazing women. And those are usually executives, but you could be anyone who's looking to accelerate your brand and your personal profile. But she's helping those rising professionals seeking authentic life of fulfillment and freedom through development of career marketing materials, digital personal branding, and client-centered coaching. She has a very diverse background. She has so many noteworthy accomplishments, cited articles in Buzzfeed, AARP, Upworthy. She's also a huge advocate for ADHD and mental health, which is such a prevalent topic right now. And so super grateful that that's very passionate to you. She's also a dancer and loves getting into salsa dancing. Yes. So lots of energy coming from Kate, avid traveler, just many, many wonderful interests. And I think that will also tie into your personal brand. So Kate, again, welcome. Thanks for being here. And let's jump into what is your background? Like, what took you on this path of helping individuals really establish their identity and personal brand?
Well, I can really relate to the struggle of identifying your personal brand and really figuring out, what are my values? What do I want to be known for? What do I want to stand for? And how do I want to portray myself, both in, my personal in-person relationships and interactions, as well as how I want to be perceived online. My background is kind of a jumble. If you think about my career, I have been a new home sales executive or associate for a large builder. I've been a nonprofit marine science educator, a writer and educator in academia. And then more recently, I was a tech advisory salesperson as well as business development executive for Gartner and Hackett Group. Now I'm a career coach. And I tell my background because I've always been the type of person who was really unsure about what career I should be in. I always knew my purpose was to help others, particularly women and minorities, but I was never sure what the conduit to that would be until I became a career coach. And I think the reason I chose that avenue is because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I really wanted to help others figure out what that meant for them. And I sort of fell into career counseling in an unusual way. I found out in my mid 30s that I have ADHD, and that answered so many questions that I had about myself, and also why I struggled in certain jobs where I had to be behind a desk, 9 to 5, focused on keyboard warrior. And around the same time I found that out, my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness. My marriage was toxic and falling apart. I was separating, moving out, pursuing a divorce. And all of these things made me think, I need to do something different. I need to potentially work for myself, find a job or a career that allows me some flexibility to be able to spend time with my dad, to dedicate more of my attention to my daughter, who's 11 now. And becoming a career coach was the avenue that I took. one of the former executive coaches that I worked with at Gartner and shared accounts with approached me and asked me if I would like to help write resumes and LinkedIn profiles for CIOs that we had formerly worked with in a different capacity. And my first account was the NCAA in Indianapolis. So that was really my introduction. I found that I loved the work so much that I was like, okay, I'm going to hang my shingle and
Love
see
it.
what happens. And that was really, really the start. And I think for those of you who are listening and aren't sure what you want to do, first of all, I want to say that's okay. Many of us are still figuring it out. And you don't have to choose one path and stay on it for life. Know that that can evolve and change. I think what's most important is really identifying what your purpose is and then finding different ways you can live that purpose out.
Yeah, I love, love, love what you just said there. And so interesting because I mean, I'm a bit older than you, and it was always perceived that, growing up, you pick a career path and you stick with that career path. And it was fascinating. My daughter and I were at a professional basketball game not too long ago, and one of the announcers has kind of taken her under his wing as a mentor. And he said to her, he used to be a principal, and he said to her, Zoe, you're going to have 6, 7, 8 careers through your life. And he said exactly what you said, Kate. He said, find what you're passionate about, find that purpose, like what's at the core of you, and pursue lots of different interests. See what you love. And what you love today might change a year from now or 2 years from now. So yes, totally in alignment with you, and also went through career changes. And so I love that you're saying that. Maybe let's talk a little bit about identity at first, because you have experienced a number of different types of careers, but at the core, they all have the same essence to it. But what happens to people with identity? Like, how are we relating our identity when we look at ourselves as a person? I guess that's where I want to kind of start.
Ooh, so I think that one of the activities that I engage in a regular basis, maybe every year or two, is really doing a reflection on my values, which generally stay the same throughout our life, but may shift a little bit as we go through different life changes. Thinking about what's important to me, how I want to spend my time, because those things make up who we are to some degree. So I think if you can really become comfortable with who you are and figuring out who am I at the core before you decide to build your brand around that, I think is really critical. And I'll let you kind of continue on that path of the identity piece, because I want to see a little bit more about which direction you're going so I can kind of build out around that.
Yeah. Well, and where my thought was, or where my thinking is often what I see is we tie so much of our identity to our work, right? And so I'm kind of leading into, the personal branding piece, because oftentimes, like, just take an example of some of the clients I work with, they will express like, oh, I'm on LinkedIn, and, I can only say certain things because I'm an employee at X place. And so they build their whole identity to the world that, I'm the, EVP or SVP or whatever of X company, but that's not really their identity. So that's kind of where I'm going with that, Kate.
Yeah, I think that is a common misconception, or that we fall into feeling like I am my job.
Yes.
And that's problematic on a lot of different fronts. And I think it also ties us sometimes too closely to our work, to where we sort of forget or lose sight of what's really important in our personal lives. And what I've always told, and this is, I'm trying not to get too off topic, but I think that a lot of people get caught up in that and really want to, or really feel like I just lost my train of thought, Vicki. I'm so sorry. I threw myself off. that was going to be my main point, is just that I think people start to identify themselves as their job. And what that does is ends up pigeonholing you a
Yeah,
little bit.
exactly.
And it puts undue pressure on you to act, behave, and even speak a certain way. I know I fell into that particularly earlier in my career, where I felt like I'm only as good as my job title. That
Right.
is not true. Our worth and our value and our marketability is not our job.
Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, Kate. So then why does that personal branding, why is that so important? And how do we start to develop that identity, that whole person identity, for the world to see?
Well, I think, what I'd like to express initially is maybe even to just clarify what our personal brand is, because I feel like a lot
Mm,
of people sort of get confused about what that really means. I hear a lot of, well, do I even have a personal brand? I'm like, listen, we all have a personal brand, whether we like it or not. Essentially, it is how people perceive us even when we're not around. It's what they're thinking about us, it's the assumptions they make about us.
yeah.
And really, when it comes down to it, it's kind of the sum of all the photos, the posts and comments, the tags and hashtags, the in-person conversations, the text conversations we have with others, even our emails and the social media accounts that we hold. That how we're perceived through those things really makes up our personal brand. But ultimately, our personal brand isn't, even though it's us, it isn't about us. It's about what value we're sharing with the world. And this is important because our brands precede us in our
Mm,
personal life in the workplace. And it's a really critical part of building our brand, is to set ourselves apart from our peers. It's what makes us special, unique, valuable, and marketable. Um, if you're job seeking, for example, recruiters, hiring managers, potential employers are Googling you. They're
yeah.
reading your social media posts. In fact, for those of you who like stats, there was a career builder survey 4 or 5 years ago that found that 70%, and this is probably higher, 70% of employers are using social media to evaluate potential candidates. And even more startling, perhaps, to some of you, 40% of employers keep tabs on their current employees via social media. That was a wow moment for me.
That's
And
huge.
I think, yeah, for many of us now, I don't want that to make you paranoid.
Yeah.
It's meant to, just make you aware that people are watching what you do, what you say, and how you say it. So, if you're job searching, it's really critical for you to have a personal brand. If you want to become a thought leader in your
Mm,
industry, it's
hmm.
also very important. If you want to gain more speaking engagements, be on podcasts, for example, those are things you want to be aware of, is how you're presenting yourself
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, absolutely. All fantastic points. And that is a staggering statistic. And so just to, take that to our emerging leaders, there's this age group, right? That's a little bit on the younger side entering the marketplace for work, and they're not putting anything out there, which is also not good, right? And
Correct.
like I'll take my oldest is graduating university in May, and it's like pulling teeth to get him to even engage on I mean, he engages on social media, but nothing about him. And so I've said to him, like, employers will be looking, right? Like, what is your interest? What is your passions? What are you talking about, right? Who are you connected with? Because that's another big one. How are you building that profile and that personal identity of who you are? So I love what you're sharing there, and about, what is the value you bring to the world?
Mhm.
How are you giving the world a glimpse of you, and just what your mission vision is outside of your employer? That becomes really, really important. So, Kate, maybe what are some tips on how do you start to identify how you even want to show up in the world? Because if you're an anti social media person, which there are lots of those, how do you
Yeah.
even begin?
Well, I would say, just dip your toe in the water. And first of all, know that your personal brand requires you to be authentically you.
Mm-hmm.
People want to know the real you. You are awesome and amazing and interesting just the way you are as a unique individual. So don't be afraid to show who that person is. And some of that comes from becoming comfortable and accepting who you are. And I think for many of us that gets a little bit easier as we mature and grow
Yeah.
older. You know, I'm in my 40s now. And I care far less about what people think of me than I used
Mm.
to. And in fact, I realized that I'm attracting the right opportunities, the right people, like my tribe, and the right jobs or clients when I am my authentic self. And
Yeah.
so, outside of presenting yourself professionally through your personal brand, to your point, sharing your interests, even on a personal level, the things that you enjoy doing, the types of people you enjoy interacting with, sharing that with the world is also okay. Because at the end of the day, we're all human and we crave human connections. And
Mm.
sometimes those connections aren't necessarily made on the professional level, although that's important. They're made through these little tidbits that we share about each other. For example, I have some of my personal interests in my LinkedIn about summary that I'm into mid-century modern furniture and dancing. And I've actually had people reach out and say, you know, there are lots of resume writers out there, and there's some fantastic ones out there as well. But the reason that I reached out to you is because we have this shared interest in
Mm.
vintage furniture. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was really interesting. And because it was just a human connection that we made, she felt like she could relate to me a little bit better.
Sure.
So um, I would say the other thing is start small.
Yeah.
So, for example, all of us should have a LinkedIn profile. And one thing I would suggest is an easy fix, and this is something that you could do today, is update your profile picture and make it something where you're wearing something that's not only appropriate for your industry and your role, but something you feel confident and good in.
Mm.
I would suggest that. And these do not necessarily need to be professional headshots, although that's great if you can swing it. iPhones, Androids, they all take fantastic pictures these days. You can remove backgrounds behind you with free technology and software out there. So I would start with that. I would also say you could easily update your banner. And there are some great tools, including Canva, which is Canva. If you're not familiar with Canva, it is an amazing tool. You can make LinkedIn banners out of templates that are already available to you through the app, through that platform. So those are two quick and easy things you can do. And even before that, I should have mentioned this to start with. Google yourself. Do it today. Find out what's already being said about you, what pictures are out of you, what articles you may have appeared in. You may find that you've been written up in an article. This happened to me a couple years ago. I Googled myself and I found 2 articles I was cited. And I was like, I'd forgotten I'd even contributed to those things. So knowing what's out there about you is really important. Do social media audits on yourself, meaning do a
Mm.
review of what you've been putting out there. And I mean, Facebook, Instagram, whatever platforms you're on, be very aware of what you've already created about yourself. And you may want to pull off some information that maybe is private or political or showcases views that may be polarizing in any direction. Just be aware that you don't necessarily need to stay neutral, but you also don't want to put anything inappropriate.
Mm.
You want to make sure that your grammar is correct. You know, just be sure that you're portraying yourself in a way that you would like to be viewed. So that audit is really important. Google yourself. That's a quick thing you can do. And then I would also say craft 2 things. First of all, a headline for your LinkedIn profile. This can also be used for a number of different platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. And make it something very specific. And I'll give you an example of mine that I think when you read it on my LinkedIn profile, it gives you a very easy, quick insight of who I am. Mine is career consultant who equips women executives to smash glass ceilings, personal branding strategist, executive resume writer, career industry leader, and your next podcast guest.
Mm. Nice. I love
So you
it.
Thank you. You get a feel for who I am and what I stand for. So be thinking about it. It could be a sentence about
Yeah.
what you do and what you showcase to the world. It could be phrases that you put the little pipe sign in between. Anything is okay. You can be creative with that, but just make sure it gives an accurate description of who you are and what you stand for. The other thing I would add is if you do not already have one,
Mhm.
you need an elevator pitch, a value prop, something to describe very quickly and concisely who you are, what you do, what you're all about, who you help, and what you're looking to do next. So instead of saying, for example, I'm a financial advisor, here's a different way you could frame this. If you're looking for a job, if you're networking, you could be at a private party and say this. Instead of I'm a financial advisor, try something like, I've been advising millennials for 5 years to help them make more sound financial decisions so they can buy their first home. In the past year, I've helped 6 people buy their first home, and now I'm looking for opportunities with larger financial advising firms so I can help even more millennials become homeowners and realize their dream.
Love it.
So it's a more interesting way of describing who you are, and it tells people exactly what you're looking for or
Yeah.
hoping to achieve by making the connection.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's so good and so powerful. And we forget the power of that because people work with people they know, like, and trust, right? And so that
Yeah.
personal brand, has to portray that message of how do you tell somebody that you're interesting, that you want to get to know me, you can trust me, you like me, like that's all what you're kind of creating, right? So that
Yeah.
more people want to get to know who you are. And it's funny you say that about it can be at a private party or whatever. And I'll just share one of my own examples. I was golfing in a golf tournament and with these amazing women. And afterwards, we were just chatting, and one of the women said, "So, Vicky, what do you do?" And so I told her, I said, I work with executive females, and it's really about how do I help them navigate complexity in the world and become conscious leaders, but also have that confidence. 2 days later, I get a message from somebody I don't know on the other side of the country who says, "Hey, you were golfing with one of my friends. She said you had some great shots and some really bad shots." She used other words. She said, "But I'd love to have a conversation with you because I'm actually looking for a coach who can help me as I'm navigating some complexities." And she's now been a client for 2 years, right? Didn't know the person from anywhere, but because her friend recommended me because we had spent the whole thing together, right? And so you just don't know where opportunities will come about. And so I love what you've shared, Kate, about how to showcase yourself in an authentic way, and give people an inside view of who you are. And that really helps them determine whether they want to get to know you or not.
Sure. And I'll also add for some folks who may be a little bit further along in establishing their brand, but are like, oh, I'm not really sure what kind of content I should put out there. There's all this
Mhm.
pressure to create.
Yeah.
For me, I'll tell you what works for me, and then I'll also share for folks who may be a little bit more introverted. I'll give some tips on ways to build your personal brand through content creation. But what's worked for me is being my authentic self, and I share personal anecdotes frequently. And I might tell a story. I mean, for example, it was my birthday on Tuesday, and go figure, at 10:30 at night on my way home from bachata dance class, I got pulled over for speeding.
Oops.
I had not had a ticket in almost 20 years. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Oh.
So I this story because it got me thinking about slowing down. Why was I moving
Mm.
so quickly? And I related it to how I operate in the careers industry and what lesson can be learned about slowing down, about not comparing
Mhm.
ourselves to others, and moving at our own pace and realizing what our own version of success is. I'll
Yeah.
also tell personal anecdotes about my dog's DNA tests and relate it to something, careers, around careers. Now, while that approach may not work for everyone, or you may not feel like sharing, personal
Mhm.
interests or stories, there are other ways to build your brand and showcase what you're all about. And that could start with sharing someone else's content, an interesting article, a podcast that you listened to that was fascinating, and then just putting your little spin on it, saying, oh, points 1 and 3 really resonated with me because of X, Y, and Z. What do you think? The important piece when you're creating content and trying to engage your audience is to actually engage them. Give a call to action. Get people involved in the conversation. This is what gets people to trust you, gain credibility, etc. So I would say, even if you're not wanting to create something from scratch on your own, or maybe you're just time constrained, like many of us are very busy, be okay with sharing things that you may not have created yourself. But I would also encourage you, if you are a bit more open to creating, post a quick video about behind the scenes. Here's what it's like to be an accountant. You may not know what your CPA does during the day.
Great point.
And that really humanizes you, makes you relatable. And you're like, ooh, I kind of struggle with, sitting at my desk for 2 hours at a time too. These are all things that help people connect with you on a more human level.
Yeah, I love that. And you're so right. It does. It makes it more personable and authentic, and people then feel like they actually know you before they even talk to you, right? And the sharing of things, I think, has such a ripple effect, right? Because it's not just about, you're sharing an article, but you're also highlighting or amplifying another voice. And what was your takeaway from that? Be it a different perspective as to how that person positioned it, or you want to amplify that even more. All great tips. So, and just being cognizant of our time, anything else that you think would be really important to help someone take that first step? Like, just go out there and do it, because we do get in our heads, right? And we start thinking, why would anybody want to hear from me? Or what do I have to say that would be important? Why does it matter? And so how would they start with that?
Well, I think one thing that you could do, even if you have been posting to build your personal brand, is an introduction, an about me post. And it doesn't have to be a video, although it could be. It could be a 200-word long form post on LinkedIn or Facebook that says, you may not know me, or you might know me as the financial advisor in your community, but here's a little bit more about why I got involved in the career path that I chose. Here's who I work with, your target audience, and here's what I have to offer. And the reason that's important is, and you might even create a post and post it every few months, just as a reminder to say, this is who I am and what I'm all about. And that's a good place to start, because for the most part, we all know what we do for a living. Most of us know why we're compelled to do it. Although, sometimes a job is a job, and that's okay too. We're not all living out our dream jobs, and that's all right. But being intentional about introducing what you do and who you help and how you help them is going to help people connect with you and help them understand why they should be connected with you, or why they should reach out to you to meet their needs. So I would say that's a really quick and dirty activity that you could take on today, and that you already have the knowledge to create.
Nice. And so something you said there tweaked another question, which I know, like, as we keep talking, more and more things come up. What platforms are the best, right? Like, I mean, I know for myself, I'm a huge LinkedIn user, but how do you decide? If you don't want to do everything, how do you decide which platform to use?
Awesome question. And this is really important, because if you're spending all your time on Instagram and your audience doesn't spend time there, or your clientele doesn't spend time there, you're spinning your wheels.
Right.
So there are some really easy ways. I mean, typically what I do is I do Google, where do women executives between the ages of 35 and 55 or 60 spend their time on social media? For me, it tends to be on LinkedIn. I do have some clientele who spends some of their time on Instagram and Facebook, but for the majority of my clients, they're spending their time on LinkedIn. So if you're a professional, you're a financial advisor, your clients are probably, they could be really anywhere, but more likely you may want to find them on LinkedIn. However, if you own a salon, for example, you probably want to spend your time on Instagram posting photos of before and afters. So being aware of who your target audience is, first of all, and then doing just a little bit of market research and finding out where do these people spend their time. There is tons of information and statistics about where your target audience is. Just be clear on who those people are. So that would be my biggest piece of advice around that.
Love it, love it, love it. And then there's the TikTok, the unknown, right? That is so, originally TikTok started out as the funny, silly videos, and now all of a sudden you've got a lot more thought leadership that's happening on TikTok. So I think that also goes into play with, do you interact on TikTok? Are you just an observer? Like, and again, I think it depends on what it is you're trying to achieve from it. If you're trying to network, build a support system, LinkedIn is most likely the place for you to go. And then for fun and personal, or to your point, like the hair salon, or, even health matters, right? Like Instagram is a great place to be. So Kate, these are all fantastic points and very helpful and inspiring. I think, let's just take 2 seconds here and talk about, again, reiterating why building your brand is important. What's your top 2 reasons that it's important to do that?
Well, we all need to make a living. I would imagine most of us here listening today have to earn a living. So at the very bare minimum, we all need to be employed, and having a strong personal brand is critical for when employers are looking to evaluate you as a potential candidate. They're going to look at your social media accounts. They're going to want to see if you're posting and what you're posting. So if you want a strong personal brand that's going to get you a job, be posting about your areas of expertise, how you do your job, who you help, what knowledge you have to share. Those are things that are going to build credibility in the eyes of an employer. So I would say that's number 1. Number 2 is our networks are hugely important, not only for job seeking, but also to find the people who are going to support you, enrich your life, become friends, give you advice, be sounding boards, become sponsors or mentors. Putting out an authentic personal brand is going to A, help those people find you, and B, express to them why the 2 of you might be a good fit to connect. So that's another important piece. And we all need a tribe, so to speak, that we can rely on. All of us, particularly women, I think we all need a boost. I mean, I'm going to say this as nicely as possible, but I focus on helping women, because the people who are getting a lot of these executive leadership positions are heterosexual white males in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And I'm ready to tip the scales a bit to allow more women and minorities to take some of those leadership positions. I think I'm doing my part as a professional, but as individuals, it is critical, particularly women, to have a strong personal brand that demonstrates your expertise and your confidence about what you do, because I can guarantee you that the people that you're up against in those job interviews are coming in confident and feeling like they own the position.
Yeah.
So little side note there would just be, we need the support system as much as we can get.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you and I do different work, but similar work. We have the same audience, but in a different way. And it is critical. And not only that, when you build that support system, having a true, authentic support system, because there is enough for all of us. And so really making sure that that message is clear, and highlighting, championing, encouraging your sisters, on social media, really amplifying the voices, which is why I do the podcast, right? Because I want to amplify amazing women's voices, and I have a few men that get to come on too, who are big allies and sponsors for women. And so that becomes a really another really important reason to build that network. And so, Kate,
Yes.
thanks for sharing that. And you do have important information to share. You have your own unique perspective that the world does need to hear. And there's a way to do it. So, get out there and participate, be part of these communities, reach out, connect with Kate and I, right? We love growing our
Yeah.
network. We love learning about you. So reach out and let us know who you are and what is important to you. And even from this podcast, what nuggets are you taking away that have had an impact and that support you? So, Kate, where can people find you? I mean, one for sure, LinkedIn. How else might they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me, and I certainly welcome you to reach out. I am here to serve you. And secondly, you are welcome to visit my website, which is quirkpersonalbranding.com. That's another place you'll find some great information about my business and a little bit about myself and services. I also have presence on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. I'm on all the major platforms, but to my earlier point, I spend the majority of my time on LinkedIn because that is where my target audience spends their time as well.
Nice, nice. So if you do have questions after listening to the podcast today, feel free, reach out to Kate, reach out to me. We'll share those questions and get answers for you. But we're really grateful that you've joined in today to listen to the podcast. It means a lot to us. And Kate, I want to thank you. Like, this has really been terrific. Some fantastic tips and I think really important information for people to recognize why their personal brand becomes important to highlight and amplify. And for our audience, I want to share with you, if you struggle to network, wilempowered offers a networking on demand. We call it love it or hate it networking, because some of us love it, some of us hate it. I'm on the love category. Check that out on wilempowered. That's 1L. And it'll give you, it's an on demand, but we also meet monthly so that you can practice your networking and build your community at the same time. So that's an option for you too. And, then maybe Kate will come on and join us in one of our sessions and we'll talk a little bit more about, how do you continue to amplify your personal brand? So thank you everyone for being here today. We have enjoyed having you, Kate. And
thank you.
I know you've got great plans this weekend to continue celebrating your birthday. So hopefully you enjoy that and wishing everyone a beautiful, wonderful, grateful day. We'll see you again very soon. Take care, everyone.